think on critical success factors and KPIs in terms of their usage of things. And I know this you know because this is normal business of you. What is interesting, however, if you would take somebody like even SAP. If you ask anybody from the enterprise architecture group, what do they say they cover? Everything. If you talk about from the business consulting team, very good from SAP. The value team, value realization team, by the way. What do they say they cover? Everything. Now my question, where would the different parts be actually situated? Value creation for the business, is that on this side or is that on that side? Yeah, what?
It's on both sides.
Yes.
And the situation is that if you are ER expert, maybe you will be in one of the boxes, BPM in another boxes, and so on.
And that's the difficulty.
Yes, that is the difficulty.
Yes. As a matter of fact, it's different initiatives. And that part was the part of the underperformers. They had mostly those initiatives, but not interlinked. And this is actually the conclusion. This is I do realize it's a lot of findings together, but this part is the difficult part because they did some of the same things having different results until we realized what was the difficulty with that. And they did it either afterwards or not aligned with each other. Having EA initiatives, having value initiatives, having performance matrix, and having BPM. So I will go a little bit more into some of these findings and then what it meant and what they did. Maybe it gives some inspiration. 96% know that their business model must change. Wow, that was a really high number of the executives. As they believed the impact that external things have, they must be more flexible. This is, by the way, new. If you take 10 years ago, as a matter of fact, in management theory, business modeling is quite new. It used to be that you innovate your product, and then your services, and now your processes, and now that you can business model, actually model your processes, they realize you must model your business model. Who you are today are not the one you might be tomorrow or in 2 years. However, 17% feel that they manage change with BPM well. This was very interesting. Even though that this would be the way how to do it. They feel they missed the link between business model and the process. This connection, I think, should be talked about in the work group afterwards a little bit more. How in the world do you do this connection in a good way? Secondly, I just want to go a little bit through this, how I believe the companies looked through this. Does every one of you know the process maturity model? CIMM? Who knows it? Who does not know it? Okay. Who's lying? All right. There's always somebody. All right. The process maturity model goes actually through 5 stages. These 5 stages I want to show in terms of their business model, because what we found out was there was a direct connection between the process maturity and the business model maturity. So when you change your processes, you actually change the business model. However, the outperformers did not do that part, as they did not evolve with it. And this was a very interesting conclusion. So, beneath we will show the process maturity. On top we will show here the business model stage. So while typically when you are thinking of functional businesses who do it in silos, the process maturity as well would be initial. Processes are ad hoc and chaotic. When the company evolves and they start to think in functions and processes, and many of you are at this level, but this affects both the business model. The processes are repeatable, which gives a lot of cost savings. However, one pitfall, and I cannot put everything in here. Anybody who's interested in some of the findings, I'm happy to send it out. I should come later to that. Very interesting to this was, because this gives cost savings. However, the things to do in this is to identify core and non-core on business level, not on process level. Because processes will go through the business, will go through core and non-core parts. You would have to identify what is core differentiated, what is core competitive, and what is non-core. What do we need to be at least as good as the others? By the way, it gave a very good insight into best practice as well, but I come to that a little bit in few slides. Then, as the business model evolves into being process-centered, they need, down here the processes are defined. They are documented and are standardized across the organization. And by the way, process owners are put in place. They need to understand what are we doing. They have defined it. The next level, the business model becomes as all process oriented. In short, there are no more kings in these. They still sit there. The HR manager, the CIHO, the COO, the CFO might be sitting there, the CMO here. They are still the kings in their domains, but it's not like they only kept it for themselves. It's actually thought, if you think of SOA, it's kind of like they put processes like SOA. They are repeatable in terms of any activity that is cut down that can be used and repeated and managed. At this level, by the way, it is measured and controlled as well. This is where we will come into some of the performance matrix I will talk about. Most companies do not have this in place. Something you do not control and measure, you can do nothing about. And let me tell you, I have a daughter who's 18 and one who's 15. I know everything about it. And she says, because when I say she just got a lung infection, and she was in the hospital for many weeks, it was very, very bad. And now she went out, and I asked her, do you have your strømpebukser, your long underwear, your warm pants underneath? And she's like, yeah. And I already heard on the yeah. This is not true. I'm like, Gabriella, come here. She's like, oh, Dad. I already knew she would know I would find out. And this is the basic fact. Everybody knows this of our company. Unless we measure, we cannot control. Therefore, it's the wrong performance measurement put into BPM. But we have to remember the evolvement of BPM. BPM came out of, it used to be BPR. I worked a lot of BPR projects. Then suddenly you realize doing business process reengineering in the end 80s, start 90s, you realize, oops, we need to have, not everything can be optimized, re-engineered. You need to engineer some, meaning innovate. We need new processes. Then business process engineering came. It was kind of an evolution. Once you did business process engineering, there came a lot of new facts to it later on with both lean and many other things that you said, oops, we need to optimize it within. BPM is a natural growth out of it, that suddenly you want to manage your processes. But once you manage your processes, you realize, oops, I need to really interconnect it with the business in terms of value drivers and performance drivers. So, at this level, the company starts to become value creating. Why I'm talking about value creating, I do realize that this is kind of a fancy word. Obviously, there's a lot of Americans involved from the universities on this as well. But it is the right term, because in the second you take an activity